a struggle of fishermen in America's remote seas. What they confront are giant fish hidden on the ocean floor. Are you ready to experience the thrill of offshore fishing? Right now, we follow American fishermen to see how they harvest and process giant grouper fish. In the Gulf of Mexico, giant groupers can be found in a variety of environments, from shallow rocky outcrops to deep water wrecks and artificial reefs. Groupers hide in these structures. They are hiding, waiting to ambush their prey. Groupers are opportunistic feeders and will eat anything including bait fish, crustaceans and squid. When unsuspecting prey passes by, they will be swallowed whole. Fishing will give fishermen a chance to pull these violent guys out of their lair. The thrill of catching a giant grouper and the challenge of fighting it make this type of fishing a popular activity. All you need is a fishing rod, a very long reel of fishing line, a weighted hook, as well as bait to attract them. Of course, fishing in deep water also requires larger fishing vessels. Lures will vary depending on the season, water conditions, and individual anglers' preferences. But popular choices are usually live bait, including fish and squid. With the advent of modern navigation devices, fishermen can soon identify these gathering locations easily in the waters off the Gulf. Typically, fishermen will anchor their boats to take advantage of good locations, or drift with the current to cover larger areas. One of the simplest and most effective ways to catch giant grouper is bottom fishing. This technique involves using weights to sink the bait to the ocean floor where giant groupers swim. To catch fish on the bottom, you will need a braided line and a suitable bottom fishing rig. The key is to make sure your bait stays in the strike zone for as long as possible. This is something that requires patience, not knowing exactly when the fish will bite. Therefore, fishermen must keep the fishing line tight. At the same time, you must mentally prepare for a tough battle when the giant grouper takes the bait. In the fall months, fishermen set out in their boats to reach the wreckage, little-known waters about 34 miles away in the Gulf of Mexico. Their waiting was rewarded. To preserve the ecology of federal waters, fishermen may only catch grouper at least 24 inches, and the daily limit is 2 fish per angler. To increase your chances of a successful giant grouper fishing trip, it is essential to grasp the best times to fish for this fish. Although some species of giant grouper can be caught all year round, but certain seasons of the year create more favorable conditions for a productive fishing trip. The giant grouper fishing season along this coast typically runs from April to November. During this time, water temperatures are warmer and giant groupers are actively feeding. However, spring and fall are great months for fishermen to easily target larger-sized grouper species. Have you ever felt helpless when finding a fish? Like there's absolutely nothing you can do to win the battle. If you're not careful, you could be pulled out of the boat and fall into the water. That's exactly the feeling you get when you hook a 450-pound Goliath grouper. The Goliath grouper is the largest grouper in the Western Atlantic, measuring 8.2 feet and weighing up to 800 pounds. Goliath groupers love to drown anything they can fit in their mouths. Whether it's jacks, snapper or snook, they don't care. Their aggressive personalities make them easy to hook, but pulling them out of their nests safely is an entirely different matter. This is something that requires not only strength, but also experience. Even so, fishermen can still catch Goliath grouper with 90 pounds of drag. These giant monsters don't have much stamina, and battles are usually quite brief. These powerful fish are huge stars in Florida waters. They like to live around rocky bottoms to the deepest places. Black grouper are quite intelligent and require more time and effort to catch. Black groupers are extremely strong. They will grab the bait and run away without giving the fisherman a chance to react. Just like their black cousins, red groupers live around rocky bottoms in waters up to 1,000 feet deep. So fishermen will have to go out to sea to find them. Red groupers are incredible fighters, and once hooked, they rarely miss an opportunity to show off their prowess. Using a variety of live bait will attract larger fish from their hiding places. The fisherman spins the reel quickly when the grouper takes the bait, allowing the hook to hook firmly into the grouper's mouth. They are very careful because yanking the hook will tear the grouper's mouth. Besides natural hunting, grouper farming on farms is also quite popular. Grouper farms can be built in many different models. Some are raised in floating cages or submerged cages. In addition, it can also be built into a large tank so the grouper can move freely. Inside this factory, large tanks are built with aeration systems to provide oxygen. Using the most modern equipment, fish farmers create the best living environment with suitable temperatures for grouper fish. This farming method has not been developed in many places, but is also a new step in the seafood industry. The natural ecosystem is not affected, and groupers do not face potential dangers in the wild. Food for grouper is mainly trash fish, such as anchovies and herring. But first, the food must be fresh, with impurities removed by soaking in fresh water before feeding to avoid causing disease in the entire fish tank. Farmers often preserve trash fish by freezing it, then grinding it and pressing it into pellets like dry food for the fish to eat twice a day, morning and afternoon. When feeding groupers, farmers spread food slowly so that the groupers can easily eat the bait. The amount of food provided will depend on the weight of the grouper. After 9 to 10 months of farming, depending on the type of grouper, farmers will harvest. When harvesting, you need to lift the net slowly to bring the grouper to an angle. Farmers use soft nets to avoid scratching scales or injuring fish when harvesting, because injured grouper are less valuable. After harvesting, the grouper will be sent to local markets or processing factories. Here people put it in an aeration tank for preservation. Farmers need to make sure the fish is alive until they are processed. Suitable grouper fish are carefully selected and cleaned before being scaled. This is also an important step, helping to remove impurities and improve flavor. Next, the grouper fish will have their bones and skin removed, leaving only the meat and then cleaned. Although not as heavy and large as sea-dwelling groupers, farm-raised groupers have a similar flavor. Fish meat will be cut into pieces and stored at high temperature. From a nutritional perspective, grouper meat contains many essential nutrients such as protein, calcium, and vitamins. Besides, when processed into a dish, grouper is also extremely delicious, bringing a good experience to diners. Therefore, this is a popular fish in local restaurants. Grouper meat can be processed into many different products, such as fresh, frozen meat, or prepared dishes such as steamed or grilled grouper. Frozen grouper products are also popular with consumers because of their convenience and long-term preservation. With patience and dedication, sea grouper fishermen battle big waves every day. Meanwhile, farmers raise grouper fish on farms using technology to ensure product quality. Although operating in two different environments, farmers and fishermen have a common goal. That is to provide the market with quality grouper fish and protect the natural ecosystem. You can never find a tuna standing still in the ocean because if they stop, they will die. They can live up to 40 years and can be sold for twice the price of the latest Rolls-Royce Phantom. So how do fishermen catch and process them? And how much profit do they make from these expensive fish? Many tuna species are found all over the world's oceans. But the most impressive are skipjack and bluefin tuna, each using different fishing methods. Skipjack tuna are the smallest but most abundant, accounting for 70% of the total tuna catch in the Pacific Ocean. They often move in large schools near the surface, so purse seining is the most common fishing method for large tuna industries, such as the Philippines. Catching skipjack tuna takes several days as there is a lot to prepare. Tons of ice and other supplies are transported to the mothership, about 11-hour boat ride away. On the next day, the fishermen prepare the fishing grounds. The goal is to gather as many fish as possible in one area. So floating objects like coconut leaves are often used because fish naturally congregate in what they perceive as shelters. Buoys are anchored in place on the seabed with ropes hundreds of meters long. A diver also has to go down to check the ropes. This is a very laborious teamwork process, and if the ropes get tangled, it will take another hour. The captain marks all locations with GPS. Then they repair the nets for the rest of the day to prepare for the big catch tomorrow. The main fishing day starts early and takes about 3 hours to do. First, the fishermen lower a large net into the water, creating a vertical wall that encloses the fishing ground prepared yesterday. Colored water and a canoe are used to confuse the fish. Then they pull it back to trap the fish in a tighter area. Now, a smaller net called a brail is used to scoop up the fish in the large net. It can open at the bottom and release the harvested fish into the ice water boxes. There are several boxes on board. Each can contain up to 27,000 pounds of fish. In 2022, the Philippines is estimated to have harvested 484 million pounds of skipjack tuna using this method. The mothership will repeat this entire fishing process in another area to catch more fish. Meanwhile, a smaller boat will bring some of the harvested fish ashore. Freshness determines the selling price of skipjack tuna, so ice is constantly added. In addition to the purse seine fishing method, the ancient technique of catching skipjack tuna with rods and lines is now also used industrially. Flocks of birds gathering on the surface are a good sign that there is a school of fish there, and this is how fishermen have located tuna for centuries. Bait fish are scattered around the boat to attract skipjack tuna. The boat sprays water behind it to trick skipjack tuna into thinking smaller fish are being chased. This method may seem like a lot of work to catch just a few fish, but 22,000 pounds of skipjack tuna can be harvested in just 15 minutes with a crew of about 15 to 30 fishermen. This technique also reduces bycatch, sea creatures caught by accident. Since fishermen only go after fish near the surface, it doesn't hurt the animals that live deep down in the ocean. Once ashore, the skipjack tuna are weighed and sold to fishmongers at local markets. Each small fish weighs about 7 ounces, and buyer's minimum purchase is a 30-pound box. But most of the fish caught are sold to Thailand, the world's largest canned tuna industry, for around $1,800 to $2,000 per 2,000 pounds in 2023. At the factory, skipjack tuna are washed with cold water. Then they are placed in a tray and steamed. The steaming temperature will vary depending on the size and number of fish. Once done, they are left to dry and cool down. Workers then manually remove the skin, head, red meat, and bones. Depending on the order specifications, which dictate the proportion and type of cut, the worker will cut large to make large pieces and small to make shredded tuna flakes. The meat is now put into cans by machine, but the worker still has to weigh it again to make sure each can is equal. Then, vegetable oil, brine, and sometimes flavorings are added. After that, the tuna can is sealed shut, rinsed and stacked together to go to the heat sterilizer. Once sterilized, the tuna can is cooled before moving on to labeling and packaging within a week. In 2023, the total export value of canned seafood products from Thailand reached nearly $2 billion, with $1.6 billion coming from canned tuna. In contrast to skipjack tuna, bluefin tuna is the largest and most expensive tuna species. This giant 525-pound bluefin tuna was sold for nearly $800,000 on the first business day of 2024 in Japan. That's roughly $1,500 per pound. These bluefin tuna can cross the Atlantic Ocean in just 1 month. And they are commercially caught primarily using trolling. This method involves towing around lures or bait with fishing rods placed in rod holders and using the boat's speed to catch them. It sounds simple, but controlling the enormous power of this giant fish is not easy. Heavy-duty rods, reels with robust drag systems, and braided fishing lines with minimal stretch are crucial in controlling the tuna's runs and preventing snapped lines. One of the key factors in trolling is choosing the fishing location. Experienced fishermen nowadays use sonar technology that can easily help them locate schools of fish at different depths. The boat maintains a steady speed, usually between 7 and 10 knots, while the trolling lines are deployed at the back. A sudden pull on a line breaks the quiet tension. The fisherman must simultaneously reel in the line and allow controlled runs to avoid losing the fish. After over 4 hours, the fisherman can finally bring the bluefin tuna closer to the boat. The intense run can heat up the bluefin tuna's body so much that it can burn its own flesh from the inside. This reduces the meat quality significantly. But a practice called swimming the fish can prevent this. The fisherman will secure the fish alongside the boat, then cut its gills to facilitate faster blood release and remove lactic acid buildup from the muscles. Once the fish dies and cools down, the fishermen bring it aboard and preserve it with a lot of ice. For commercially caught bluefin tuna in the US, each is carefully tagged and measured to report to fisheries authorities. Then it's gutted and the flesh is assessed based on color, texture, and fat content within a few days. This particular fish was a giant, weighing a hefty 845 pounds and stretching 10 feet long. But it only got sold for $3.50 a pound, which is much less than some smaller tunas. This is because the fish wasn't fatty enough. Typically, smaller tuna cores under 350 pounds are sold to Japan for a higher price, but fishermen have to cover the shipping costs. Because of rising costs in 2024, most US bluefin tuna are sold domestically. Japan is the world's largest consumer of bluefin tuna because they love it in sashimi and sushi. The first stop for these fish here is at famous auction markets like Toyosu Market. Skilled tuna buyers use their knowledge of how tuna are built to maximize yield and maintain the quality of each cut. The most prized bluefin tuna cuts are those with high fat content, like the extra fatty belly, toro, and the fatty belly, otoro. These are meticulously cut and used in the most expensive dishes. The Japanese processing method strives for minimal waste. Even parts like the head and bones of the bluefin tuna are used to create flavorful broths or other specialty dishes.